Hey there, welcome back to the channel. If you've been following me for any length of time, you know that this is kind of a big day for me. You can see that this front end of the truck, well, the chassis, in fact, I've turned it around in the garage, but the front is on the ground and on tires. Not the wheels and tires I'm going to go with at the end, but it's what I've got right on hand, so there we go. So now, I can take this part of the rotisserie, so I've got this already off. I can take this part off, get these cleaned up in here where I couldn't reach, but most importantly, the cross member is here. The engine is over there, and the engine hoist is on the same side of the chassis as the engine, so I can get this lifted up. It's winter out here, so whatever I can do to not open that door is best. Now I did have to turn this around because when I put the engine in, I have to use the gantry to put this cab on, right? And the gantry will not lift the cab high enough to clear an engine and the radiator core support. My thinking right now is I'm going to drop in the engine, transmission, transfer case, put in the gas tank, run the brake lines, run the fuel lines. Then I might actually put the core support in, put the radiator in, and get the whole thing fired up. So just use this as the engine stand. I guess I'll probably put exhaust on it as well. But if I use this as the engine stand, well, if I see any leaks or problems, there's no body to get in the way. So it'll be really easy to do any kind of work that needs to be done before I put any body on. So I think what I'll do is I'll just build up the entire chassis and then do that. You can see the rear back there. Right now, it's still up on that half of the rotisserie, so I still have to bring the wheels and tires in for the rear. I don't know if I'm going to do it immediately. It lets me push it side to side real easily, though I do have some dollies that I could probably put under it as well. The biggest issue is those wheels and tires are outside, and well, it's winter, so if I can leave them outside for a little bit, that's fine. But next up is to take that motor and drop it on here. So let's get started. Before I can put the motor in, I need to put motor mounts onto the block. The LA motors are asymmetric on the bosses that are cast into the block, and they're different between 318 and then 360 and 340. Actually, the 273 I think is the same as the 318. I know 340 and 360 are different though. So this is the passenger side mount, and that's the same on all of them. The driver's side mount, however, this is from the 318. You can see it's actually a little bit wider than the passenger side, but this is way too wide for the boss on there. I actually need a 360 mount for these. And that's what this is here. You can see the difference. So if I line them up here, if I can, you can see how much of a difference there is. Now, I've seen the 318 used on 360s more than once, and I've probably done it in my youth as well. You can stack in some washers here or get a really thick, washer, or turn down a piece of round stock and drill a hole in it, whatever, to fill up that gap. I don't think there's probably any problem with doing that, especially for just, street motor. But these are, there's quite a bit of a difference. In fact, they're not even just a mirror of one another. So again, this is the driver's side. This is the passenger side. They're still not the same width, and you can see, they're shaped different as well. They're almost a mirror, but they're a different width. So I've got this one cleaned up. I've got to get the motor mounts onto these motor mount brackets. The mounts are the same on both sides. And it's just one of these rubber sandwiched between two steel plates, and then it's got a bolt that goes through it. Of course, it's been so long since I did this, I don't remember if it goes like this or like this. So we'll have to figure that out. I do know that this bump right here goes into the slot here. So I'll bolt those on and then bolt it onto the engine block. Then we'll go try to put it in. And invariably I'll have those wrong and have to flip them over. It doesn't matter which direction I put them. When you go to put this bracket onto the block, it goes toward the rear of the engine. On this side it's pretty obvious, but I have seen them bolted like this before. Goes on the rear. I'm pretty sure I've got to get it in that hole. It's not going to get down to that slot that I originally thought. It's got to go into this hole. So I think I have to unhook it from the bracket, put it in there, and then since this has a slot in it, I can slide it down in and slot it on. All right, it is sitting on the cross member. Still holding it with the engine hoist because there's nothing underneath the back of it. So it wants to tip back. I need to get something under it to hold it because I still have to get the bell housing, the clutch, the transmission, all of that on the back side. And when I get all of that on, then I have to figure out where the transmission mount goes, because I suspect the transmission mount that I have for this doesn't match this frame. So I'll probably have to come up with something. Next up is to get the transmission on this. I rebuilt a new process 435 for it. I'll put a video up here for that. But in order to get it on, we have to get the clutch on first. And in order to get the clutch on, we got to get this head unit from the engine stand off of here. So I'm going to lift it up, remove this, and put the clutch and I guess flywheel as well on here. There's the flywheel part number. Well, son of a... I tried to put that on and it just does not fit, which makes no sense. I double checked. This is the right part number. According to the Pioneer catalog, it's the same flywheel for 5.9s and 360 LAs going back to who knows when. Unfortunately, none of them have measurements of things. But I came back out and looked, and this is the part number. Look at what's in the box. Let's see if my luck is any better this time. Well, that's a good sign. Part number inside the box matches the one on the outside. Let's get it mounted. I did order new flywheel bolts, so I'll use these. Make sure that the pilot bearing or bushing that came with the clutch kit fits the input shaft on the transmission. Fits this one nicely. Next, you want to make sure that the pilot bearing fits into the back of the crank. Obviously, if you've got an old bearing or bushing in there, you have to remove it. Now, the fun part here is this one does not fit in there. The reason is that this is an old automatic transmission crank and it's drilled out, but it's not reamed to size. The next step is I've got to order a conversion bearing that fits inside here, which is a machined size, on the back side of the crank, and it has a roller pilot. I've ordered one, but once again, it'll be a couple of days before I come back to it. Here's the part number. It looks like this. Make sure it fits on this input shaft. It does quite nicely. Drive that in till it's seated. The reality is, this is just a piece of steel and it takes the exact same bearing as the original one that comes with the kit. So once this is in, if you need to replace the bearing, you can use just this original. Again, here is the part number on that. You can see, though, that the spline count on this transmission and the spline count on the clutch disc that comes with this kit is not going to work. There is no way that's going to fit for me. So instead, I had to get a different clutch disc. There's the part number. And this one has the correct number of splines in it. To add to the list of things that are a pain in my ass on this project, because this clutch disc is different, the pilot tool that I have doesn't go in. It's splined for the other one, the one that is not correct for this input shaft. I drilled a hole in it here to see if it was hollow, and it is, so I can't just put this on the lathe and turn it down. Dug around in my spare box, and I've got this chunk of brass. It's not near as long as I would like, but I think I can turn it down so that it slides right inside there, and then just put on the end of it. I won't go quite this far. I'll probably just put enough to get into that bearing, and then hopefully we can use that to align this. And hopefully there will be enough that I can get a hold of it and still pull it back out. I still have to flip it around and do this little piece here, but that fits on there nicely, and that fits on there nicely. Alright, I added a bolt here to give it a little more length. Now I'm going to test fit it. That looks pretty good. And that comes out. Alright, I'm going to clean up the surface of this flywheel, and we'll assemble the clutch. Make sure the pressure plate is also clean. Just for a little added reassurance, I'm going to use Loctite Blue on the bolts to hold the pressure plate on. Once you get them all started, then go ahead and tighten them down and torque them. This is going to push this spring back, and it's going to grab the clutch between the pressure plate and the flywheel. Now you can take the tool back out. Next up is the fun of bringing the transmission over and getting it mated. Before you mate these, make sure you take the throwout bearing and put it onto that input shaft. And that is a whole hell of a lot easier than doing it with the body on the vehicle still. Now I just need to bolt the bell housing to the block. Now that the transmission is bolted up, I need to move rearward, and I need to get the mount on here. Of course, I put the strap right where the mount needs to go, so I need to take that off. But then I need to move this cross member. It's just laying in here right now. I need to move it up, hook the mount to it, and then figure out where to drill holes or expand some of these holes. These are from the previous mount. This frame is a 1978, and it had a new process 203 and automatic, which were married together, and it had a cross member that went actually over the top of both of them, I think. No, it went actually underneath both. So it went underneath the pair and it bolted up over here. The new cross member goes underneath here, but it goes over the top of the transfer case, probably somewhere over in here. You can see now the challenge I'm running into is this is too far that direction. It needs to move over so it sits right in this saddle. So I think that I need to move the motor mounts, or at least loosen them up, so that I can get this swung over. In fact, I think this one on this side is in the wrong spot. So I'm going to go loosen them, and we'll take a look and see. I might be able to pivot some things around, but this needs to come over. I don't know, that looks like about 4 inches. All right, with both motor mounts loose, and I did move the hole on this one, I'm able to push it around and get it lined up. So once I get the mount hooked in here and get everything aligned, I'll go back and retighten those motor mounts, but I'm going to do that only after I have the transmission mounted to the frame. So next step is to get this cross member attached to the transmission and then get it lifted up so that I can find holes or make holes in this upper frame rail to bolt it in. I actually think that these holes probably line up. So I'll lift it up, get it bolted in, then I can tighten this down, tighten that down, tighten that down. And the transmission and motor will be in. It looks like I'm sort of lucky and sort of not lucky. So this one at least fits, right? And it's pretty straight. You can see over here, there's one there. Unfortunately, it's a little bit in. I suspect that this whole frame needs to be pushed over. So normally I'd put the high lift jack or something on here and squeeze it, but unfortunately that's being borrowed by somebody. So I think maybe a come along. Put it in here, pull this frame together, and get a bolt in there. Unfortunately, you can see that the hole on this one is probably right about here, so it doesn't match up with this hole, so I'm going to need to put another hole. In fact, you can kind of see it right there. So this hole needs to be elongated to hit that, and it's probably about the same over on this side. Turns out a ratchet strap worked just fine. It really didn't take a whole lot of tension to get it. So I've got one in over here, one in over here. I think you get the idea. There's no point in me videoing drilling a couple of holes and putting in a couple of bolts. So that's all there is to it. Easy to say anyway. Got a transmission and motor swapped. It used to be a 318 an auto. It's now a 5.9 Magnum and a new process 435. Thanks for watching.